terms of foreign buyers, let's say that I am a foreign buyer and I am looking to purchase an investment property remotely, right? They go through the process with me, but there are a number of steps they need to follow up with you on.
Yeah. So the biggest consideration for a foreign buyer is the non-resident speculation tax,
Yes.
foreign buyer tax. It's like commonly known as.
Yeah.
So it's 15% on the purchase price.
In
Okay.
addition to other taxes.
Correct. In addition to your land transfer tax, there's this foreign non-resident speculation tax. Now, it's calculated on the purchase price, so it's easy enough to determine what it is. There's online calculators for it as well, but definitely, plan for that and budget for that in your closing
100%,
costs.
yeah. Now, a buyer will typically ask me, well, what is the benefit of purchasing in Ontario if I have to pay so many closing costs and so many taxes?
Well, the benefit, like with real estate in general, is location, right? Like if you're buying something here as opposed to something in, Saskatchewan, or actually that might not be a good example, but you know what I mean, like somewhere else, it's the property you're buying for, the value of it. The additional taxes play into your calculus of your profit margins and the value there, but you're buying in Ontario for the reason of its location.
Yeah, so I always tell clients who are foreign buyers, think of their investment in Ontario kind of like a long-term GIC. So
Yeah.
it's a slow but steady grow. I mean, obviously they're not seeing massive returns, but with anything that has massive returns, there's also massive risk involved. With
Yes.
Toronto, our market, or Ontario, our market tends to be fairly stable. And even in the last housing crisis, we were able to bounce back after 6 to 8 months. So I think,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that makes perfect sense, right? Like with real estate in any type of real estate investing, it's probably a slower ROL, ROI, sorry, return on investment, but it's much more secured, and that's the reason,
absolutely,
right?
yeah,
So,
yeah. Now, do you have any common questions for first-time investors that they normally come to you and say, my mind is boggled?
yeah. So actually, one thing I should mention too about the foreign, the non-resident speculation tax, or what are the requirements? So how do you know if you qualify as a non-resident?
Yeah, I was gonna
Um,
ask you
So if you are not a Canadian citizen
that. Yeah.
or not a permanent resident, so you don't hold permanent resident status, you will have to pay this tax.
Yeah.
Now, if you become a citizen or permanent resident within, I believe it's 3 years,
Mhm.
after the time of purchase, then you can apply to have that money refunded back to you.
That is good to know. I didn't even know that myself. Look at that.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's a common question I get. The HST stuff we talked about with pre-construction's another one. Something else as well that purchasers, investors may not be aware of is if you're buying anything commercial,
Yeah.
there are HST implications there, right? Your sales tax, because it's commercial and not residential,
Mhm.
there's implications there. And it can be on the property itself, it can be on any chattels
Mhm.
or like equipment or fixtures that are coming with it. All of those things, right. So all of those things will carry, impose their own HST implication on the transaction. So it's something you want to factor in and have a discussion with your accountant and your lawyer, because sometimes it needs to be paid on closing, and sometimes we just, there's documents we sign where you self-assessed at the end of the year,
Yeah.
and paid at the end of the year. But just something that the investors should keep in mind if it's
That's
commercial.
actually really great advice. Thanks for letting us know because we always think it's two separate issues. And, a lot of people don't invest in commercial because they're scared to jump into that space. But
Yeah.
if they understand the process and the tax implications more, they'll see that it's pretty much similar long term.
Yeah, I mean, if you're investing, essentially it's a business model that you're running, right? So all of these things should be considered. And, commercial properties are great investments. You just, I guess, would have to be more aware of the business aspect of it, right? Your
Yeah.
HST. and stuff.
Especially commercial properties underneath condos.
Yeah,
Yeah, people sleep on those, but if you can get a good tenant in there, like
for sure.
you're set up
Commercial.
for like years because that condo's not going anywhere.
Yeah, commercial properties are, well, I'll get into this in a second, but commercial properties are fairly good because, tenants are typically long term, income generating, revenues typically are more than on residential. The difficulty though with commercial properties is the mortgage, getting approved for a mortgage, the mortgage
Yeah,
underwriting.
yeah, that
Typically
tends
they
to be a
want,
little bit more difficult. But if you have more liquid cash or if you buy in during
yes,
the pre-construction phase, then
right.
yeah, then
And
it's
then
good.
it's an investment, yeah.